Good evening. Thank you for coming out this evening. I so appreciate that you all got the nonverbal cue that this is the side of the room we're using. That was an intelligence test and you all passed. It's fantastic. We actually blew a bulb, so this was not the ideal plan, and having you sitting in the dark is not rather ideal either, but thank you for understanding that some of those things you just can't control. So, I'm Susan Wallace. I'm the high school principal, and I am delighted to see so many of you here tonight. I had the pleasure of getting to know your students last week at our 8th grade Shadow Day, and I'm sure that they came home with all kinds of overwhelming stories and things, and maybe some questions that we can get answered tonight, but I'm going to open us in a word of prayer. Father, I thank you for this opportunity to highlight this ministry of yours, what we're doing here in the high school. I know this is a very big decision, whether it's a first child or a second child or the last child coming to high school. It can be really overwhelming to think about making that leap up this hill. So, Father, we don't take lightly the questions these parents have, the concerns they have, just what's weighing on their hearts as they make this decision. So we ask you to be here with us this evening and help us get all of those questions answered. Share with them what a wonderful place we believe CAK High School is, so that they will leave here able to make a decision that brings you glory and honor. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So we do know that it is a big decision. Personally, I have 5 kids. I survived 5 kids coming through Christian school and high school. And how many of you, this is your first one in high school? Wow, good for you. You'll make it. I promise. You'll get there. And as I said to someone a little while ago, 4 years from now, you're going to be preparing for high school graduation. You are the class of 2023 with these kids. I know that sounds really kind of overwhelming. So we're going to accomplish a lot of things tonight. You're not going to hear from me that much. Here at the beginning, I'm going to talk to you, but then I'm going to turn it over to some really qualified people. One of the first things I want to do is introduce our faculty over there, and what we're going to do, the program for this evening is going to be basically, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes, our counselors will talk to you, and then you will have time to go over and visit with our freshman teachers, ask them any questions you want, look at their materials. There are refreshments in that corner that we will also get to enjoy in a little while, and then we'll all just fellowship and hang around and get all of your questions answered. All right? So that's sort of our plan for tonight. I can tell you a lot of things about CAK. This is my first year here, and so I have grown to love this place. CAK is mine now. And I can tell you about all the great things we do academically. I can tell you how wonderful these teachers are, how great the curriculum is. But really, it's you and your kids and the opportunity you give us that makes this such a great place to work with your kids and to just speak into their lives and their hearts. So without you, this wouldn't be a great place. And I just want to say thank you. We recognize that is a big sacrifice. My kids came through private education, and I know what that sacrifice is. It is a big one. Our teachers are the next best thing about this school. We have amazing teachers. And I'm just going to ask them to raise their hand when I say their name, so you can kind of get an idea of who's who. On this end, we have Mrs. Lindsay Oakes. She teaches freshman Bible. Mr. Bart Carrican. He teaches history. Shelley Jost, raise your hand, Shelley. Shelley is our academic center coordinator. She works with our kids that have all kinds of unique needs. That's probably the best way to say it. Sue Novikov is also our lead teacher. Sue teaches math. She's also one of our acting assistant principals this year. Lisa Syard is our department chair for science. She teaches our upper level science. And Gloria Murph is our French teacher. We don't have a Spanish teacher here for you this evening, but Gloria can probably answer your questions as department chair for the world languages. And Mrs. Laura Barabee on the end is our freshman English teacher. So quite often people have general questions, and I'm going to go through some of that with you right now and just give you some idea. One of the questions people want to know is, where do our kids go to college? Where are our kids going? This gives you some idea of last year's class and where they went. So the number after each of those colleges tells you we had 30 kids go to UTK, which is pretty remarkable. I don't know how many of you are UT graduates. Anybody's blood run orange? Yes, go Vols. Mine does too. But I also recall that when I was there just a couple of years ago, the ACT score was nothing like what it is now to get into UT. So it's much more rigorous to get in there now than it used to be. But those are just the college choices just for last year's class. The other question people ask is, how much are our kids getting, just a graduating class, in scholarship dollars? And this is from 2013 to last year. We don't have this year's numbers yet, but come to graduation and you'll get that number. So you can see that we're well into the millions. I've asked the question myself, that 22 million number there, what was that? Most likely, well, that was, first of all, one of the largest classes, but that was most likely some athletic scholarships that were part of that. So we are at 4,384,000 last year. And the next question people say is, academically, how are we? We're good. We are really good. And I'm really proud of this, and you should be too. Our school outperforms the national average, the state average, the Knox County average, and almost every other school in Knoxville. So this past year's graduating class boasted an ACT average composite score of 25.5. Our top 25% of last year's class had a 31 on the ACT as a composite. That's pretty impressive. And the credit for that goes to these folks. That is really quite an amazing feat. We also have, I think I counted earlier, over 20 national merit finalists and semifinalists in the last 5 years, which is another amazing bragging point, because all of those things translate to scholarship dollars, right? And what do you want for your kids? Do you want scholarships? Do you want college? Do you want, I mean, hopefully, yes, that is one of the goals. But first and foremost, I hope while you're here is because you want them to know Jesus. You want their hearts to be in a place where he can speak into their lives and his plan is walked out in their life, right? This is just a means to that. But this is a good goal. Okay, so bragging about the people, I have two other people I haven't introduced you to yet. One is Pamela Kilburn. She's one of our school counselors. And the other is Cindy Stauffer. And she is our other school counselor. And you're going to hear a good bit from them in a little bit. And then if there are questions at the end, I'll come back up and answer those for you. Got it?
Who in here was a little bit nervous when their child brought home the 4-year plan? Yeah. I think people that are brand new to the high school, it is unbelievably scary when you see that and you realize that your kid is still in 8th grade. They haven't even finished middle school, and we're asking you to plan out their entire high school career. So we are here to help. You'll hear a lot tonight about the 4-year plan. We'll be at the tables. You can make follow-on appointments with us if you need to. We will walk you through the process. And really, what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody who comes in is going to graduate. So we like to start at graduation and work back to make sure that everything has been taken care of. How many people know what a high school counselor does? Yeah, not too many. We like to call ourselves one-stop shopping. So especially for our new students and especially for the new freshmen, We told your kids the other day, when you come in and you don't know something, come and see your school counselor. So I'm the school counselor for last names starting with A through K. Mrs. Kilburn is the second half of the alphabet. So we kept telling them again and again, which faces do you need to remember? If you only remember one thing, remember to come to see your school counselor, because we have 4 different domains that we deal with. So the first is the academic domain. So what that means is if your child is struggling with writing their first paper, they can come to me and I'll refer them to the writing lab and help introduce them to our writing lab coordinator. If they're struggling with algebra and trying to adjust to a new level of math and the pace of new math, I can send them to our math lab and introduce them to the math lab. We have Mrs. Jost that you met that oversees all of the academics, and she keeps a really close eye on our freshmen. If there's a struggle, say they've signed up for too many honors classes and now they realize reality set in, we can help them with that. So the first thing that we do is help them get the schedule. The second thing we do is help them adjust to the schedule and make sure the schedule is right for them. So we work a lot on that the first couple of weeks of school with them. The other thing in academics, sometimes as time goes on, we think we have their schedule right, and all of a sudden they start to dip a little bit, just like all their classes are just like they were A's and now they're B's and they're headed toward B minuses. And many times the teachers and Mrs. Jost, they alert us to something's not right because across the board they seem to be kind of sliding. And that's when we'll contact you and say, hey, how about we get a parent-teacher conference? We'll get all the teachers in, we'll get you in, and we'll just talk about, how is your child doing in each class so that we can make a plan to bring them back up before it becomes a bigger problem. So we will work with you a lot in terms of academics, a lot with you, but more importantly, a lot with your student. Second thing is we are social, personal, spiritual counselors also. So that means if your child can't find somebody to sit with at lunch, they can come to us. If they don't even understand lunch, they can come to us. If their friend group is shifting and now they just don't know what to do, they don't feel good anymore in school, they can come to us. If there's some sort of grief or extra stress in their life, you can let us know that in case they don't, and we can look after them. Here, as school counselors, we're doing lots of different things, and we depend a lot on other students to come to us and say, hey, we've noticed. So if you'll encourage your students to help us with that. The teachers tell us a lot of times you need to check in with the student, but we welcome anything from you to say, hey, this is going on in my child's life. Can you please check in on them?
Okay, so Mrs. Stauffer covered the academic and social personal domains. I'm going to talk to you guys about the college and career advising in the high school and what that looks like. And I'm really excited to get to do that part because I think this is one of the things that really sets us apart as a school. This is one of the ways that the individual attention and care and investment in your student is really going to be noticeable. The college and career advising, so the career is divided into 4 segments. Each year we cover a different component of the career advising curriculum with your student. So this starts freshman year with assessment. We use a website called Naviance for our college and career advising, which is just an incredible resource. You can get access as parents and view what your students are doing on there. We, as school counselors, can view what your students are doing on there, and all of their college and career advising materials are in one place, which is really nice. So, and it's very easy to use. So the first year is assessment. We do 5 assessments on Naviance together that look at different aspects of how God uniquely crafted your student, and we talk about what the purpose for that might be. So we do something called biblical integration, where everything that we do inside of your student is from a Christian worldview, and we integrate that into everything we do. So we talk about how work is ministry, and whatever work they go into has the opportunity to be an incredible ministry in their life. And we start there with assessment. Sophomore year I'm actually in the classroom with sophomores this week, and we're doing the second component, which is research, which is a lot of fun. They pick 3 careers that they want to research, and they have a research packet that they're completing in class this week. And they really enjoy this because it's something that they're interested in, and they get to explore it and find out things that they didn't know about it. And this week we talk about decision making and goal setting, which is a lot of fun. They really enjoy those. Today we used Nerf darts to talk about goal setting, which was a big hit. And so sophomore year is research. Junior year is experience, which ties into our capstone project. And that's where we encourage students to go out, and it's called informational interviewing, where they talk to somebody in that career field, or ideally really shadow, volunteer, get some real life exposure. Most students get their perception of what work is going to be like from television. Fictional television mostly, so that's a problem. And so getting some exposure can really help them to get a more realistic perspective of what work is like, and we love how that ties into possibly with the capstone project, using that to explore careers. Senior year is professional skill development. So after we walk them through how to choose a career, we want to make sure that they're set up to be successful in that career. So we use that as an opportunity to talk about resumes, cover letters, informational, or we talk about networking, different things like that that will help them just be successful in the career that they choose and feel confident about that. So there's so many things that we do with them that we're just thankful to have the time to have exposure with them to do with career. College is very similar. So college and career kind of go hand in hand. We use Naviance for that as well. And we do a lot of college visits on campus. So colleges will come at lunch sometimes and set up tables. We'll announce that to you and to students. And often when they're here, we'll do video interviews. So the Warrior Network has been an incredible resource for us, because if we have a college rep that we feel like, they just have something really worthwhile to share to families. Families might not know that this college is known for this particular thing, and we want to communicate that to students and parents. We can record a video interview. They're usually about 15 minutes long. We send those out to students and parents, and it just gives you a quick glimpse of the different colleges and what might be a good fit for your student. So we have our own YouTube channel. We have a lot of online resources that we make available to you. We have a college advising handbook that we've developed that is just super comprehensive. And what we have found as we go to conferences and we're constantly doing professional development is we are always kind of ahead of the curve on this, which really makes us confident that we're giving you guys some good content for your students and just making sure that you're always well prepared for these important decisions that they're going to have to make soon. So we just love that.
One of the things that we talked to your students about when they were over the other day is, in addition to academic skills, they need some soft skills. They need to develop some things like organization. They need to become resourceful, and we want to help them learn to do that. So, for example, if they come to me with a problem, I might say, well, have you tried the math lab? Have you tried this? And try to walk them through the process of solving their own problems, because that's one of the things that started in middle school, but in high school, we really need them to leave high school knowing how to solve their own problems and thinking through all of that themselves and taking some risks and being uncomfortable talking to a teacher. So we encourage them to pick those things up. The other skill we talked to them about was, well, it's not really a skill, it's a mindset. Has anybody read the book on mindset, the Carol Dweck book? It's basically, good job, it's basically approaching something that they don't know how to do, and the way they approach it is, I don't know how to do that yet. And it's I'm not going to know everything in high school yet, but I'm going to learn, and I'm going to make sure that I learn these things so that I don't struggle with them all the way through high school. The graduation requirements disappeared. Okay. So now to get a little more specific on the things that you need to know to do the 4-year plan with your student. These are the actual requirements. And if you see, we have two different sides. A standard CAK diploma, hardly anything is different, by the way. That's 24 credits. It's got all the same requirements, but it has 2 additional electives. So the honors diploma here, the only difference between the standard diploma and the honors diploma on this chart is that the honors diploma has 2 additional electives. So what that means in terms of the 4-year plan is at least 2 of the 4 years your child would need to take 7 classes versus the minimum 6 classes plus a study hall. So that's just something to keep in mind. We try to do that early. I try to get the students to do their 7 classes if they're going for the honors diploma, which I like them all to at least shoot for the honors diploma at the beginning as we're doing the 4-year plan. So I talked to them about, okay, your first 2 years, let's see how we can work this out to put you on the right track for the honors diploma. These requirements are the state of Tennessee requirements so that your child will be lined up to go to a Tennessee college and have everything that they need if that is their desire. Every year, students take a Bible class. That's an automatic. There's nothing to do on the line that says Bible. It's already filled in for you. English, every year they'll have an English, and the only choice is what level of English they'll take. The first couple of years, you have a choice of honors or CP, which is our standard class. They're all college prep classes, so even with a CP, your student will be ready for college. Math, they'll take a math every year, and that is even the students who have already had algebra in 8th grade, they will still take a math every year. In some cases, they may double up. We have a few students who double up and take statistics the same as another math class. We have a few students who double up because they took pre-calculus in 8th grade, pre-algebra in 8th grade, but they want to get all the way through calculus. So sometimes students will get here and go ahead and take the Algebra 1 and decide, hey, I got this. I want to go ahead and double up geometry and Algebra 2. So there are some things that we can talk about as time goes on, depending on what your students' goals are. But every year they'll have a math. Science, this is different. Science, they have to take biology, they have to take chemistry. So that's normally 9th grade and 10th grade. And then junior and senior years, they need to take 1 science between the 2 years. So if you've got a child who wants to go into a medical or a scientific field, they may want to go ahead and take both years of a science. There are plenty of science options, but the requirement is 1 extra science after they've completed the biology and the chemistry. Social studies is the same way. It's only 3 total, and the 3 that they need are already mandated on the 4-year plan. They're already written in. Sophomore year is the year that they do not have to take a social studies class. You'll see a kind of a hole on the 4-year plan. That's the first year that they would have the opportunity to take an AP class because we offer AP European history that year as an option. Mrs. Kilburn will continue to talk about this during her time as she goes through the 4-year plan very specifically. Wellness, there is a wellness class required for all students. It's normally taken freshman year, if not then, usually sophomore year. If you have June wide open, because it's most of the month of June and it even starts at the very end of May, they could take it here in the summer. So if you have that, we've given you, I believe you have the summer class plan, and you could sign up for wellness. That would take care of one of those 2 years that your student needs the 7 credits. They could still take 6 plus a study hall, and the 7th credit would be from the summer wellness. PE, if your student is playing any kind of a high school sport, that's an automatic, that's the PE 0.5 credit is taken care of through a sport. If not, we have strength training, and they can come and see me, and we'll talk about additional PE options. World language, we offer French and Spanish. They need to take 2 years of the same language. So they can take up to 4, so if they start next year with a language, then they could take all 4 years. When they get to those things beyond the 2 years that are required, those become electives. The same thing like in science. We only require 3. If they take a 4th science, that becomes an elective. Anything beyond what is required is an elective. And we have some just courses that are electives: photography, law, contemporary issues. We have a lot of different electives once these requirements are met. Arts, 1 credit. So that means 1 class. It could be art, it could be choir, musical theater, or band. After you take the 1 art, or you can go on to other things. So those are the 4 that can be picked from to meet the requirement, but there are lots of fun electives once you've met the requirement in the arts area. And then, like I say, there are lots of electives or additional core courses that can get you the elective credit.
One additional thing about that, Mrs. Stauffer mentioned that the only difference that you see up here between the regular diploma and the honors diploma is the 2 additional elective credits, but there are a few other criteria that they'll have to meet as well. So they'll need a 3.5 or higher GPA, no out-of-school suspensions, and a combination of 4 AP honors and or dual enrollment classes. That's just a total of 4, and that can be any combination of, so it could be 4 honors classes, a few AP classes, and a dual enrollment class. It can be any mix, but it's a combination of 4 throughout their 4 years in high school, not 4 each year. Sometimes that gets confusing.
Okay, so if you're wondering what honors classes we offer, here they are listed here. Some of them will not apply to your freshmen. So freshman year, we offer 4 possible honors courses. Your student can take none, and that is just fine. They're adjusting to high school. The most important thing is to do well in whatever classes they have. So doing well in a CP class is more important than doing so-so in an honors class. So first thing, if they're going to take an honors, there are prerequisites, and there's a sheet. It's in the program of studies, the manual that you got. It describes what the prerequisites are. So you can look at that and see if you think your child would qualify for one of the honors classes. But it's also just important to talk to them and help them balance their load. What is the right amount of honors, if any, for them? So sometimes students are going for an honors diploma, like Mrs. Kilburn mentioned. They may target 1 honors type class each year, or they may be the type student that is, they want to max out everything and they'll go right into the honors classes. If you want to know how common honors is, I didn't have a feel for this at all when I had my first freshman coming in. I didn't really know how to start them. I'm just going to go over some of the. Biology is one of the honors classes available to freshmen. Right now we have about 70% of our students taking CP biology and about 30% taking honors. So that kind of gives you an idea of the breakout. Similarly, in English, it's about the same breakout. About 70% are doing CP English right now and 30% doing honors English, roughly. History, it's about 50-50. 50% taking CP, 50% taking honors. And then it's a little harder to get that count. We have some students in Algebra 1 and some in honors, and some in geometry, and they both have CP and honors components. So it just depends on your student and how they've done in math so far. Prerequisites are a really good guide as to how your student would do. There are some exceptions. Maybe they didn't make exactly what is required, but you think there's a reason for that, and you think that they could still do very well in the honors class. We have an honors contract where they have the opportunity, and this is part of what you turn in, the 4-year plan and the honors contract. You turn those in together. You only need the honors contract if your child is planning to take at least 1 honors class. And if they did not meet the prerequisites, there's a place where the student can kind of make a case for themselves, like, why do they believe that the honors class is right for them? They didn't quite get the prerequisite. Maybe they had an 88 instead of a 90, but they're really super great and studious kid. Then that might be something that you both can talk about and you can agree to, and they can make a case on the back of the honors contract. As I mentioned, the first opportunity for an AP class, which is advanced placement, is sophomore year, and that's for the AP European History. Normally, those are students, they're very good students. They're students often who love history, they love reading and writing, and they're like, bring it on. So something to consider. Right now, we have 11 AP classes. Most of them are junior and senior years. The difference in AP and dual enrollment, it goes like this. Both classes have the potential to get your child some college credit. An AP course, you take it, it's a higher level course all year. Toward the end of the year, your child takes an AP exam, and if they score, usually it's a 3, 4, or 5. Some colleges will only accept a 4 or a 5, and some colleges will accept no AP credit. But if they score well enough on that exam, often they can get college credit for that class. Colleges like to see AP courses on a student schedule because they understand the national exam. AP exams are national exams, so the colleges understand what that means to have taken an AP class and what that score on the AP exam means. The other option is dual enrollment. These are the courses we have that are dual enrollment. They're through Bryan College, and your student takes these with a CAK faculty member. It's a regular teacher teaching it in the regular classroom, but it's actually a Bryan College course. Depending on the college your student's going to, it may apply to the college and keep them from having to take the same class again in college. One thing to know about the honors classes and the dual enrollment in AP, and this is important, I think, to know right now while you're making your decisions. There is an advantage in the GPA for an honors class. So for your case, for next year, every honors class, your student gets a 0.5 bump in the GPA computation. So for example, an A is a 4.0. If they got an A in an honors class, it's a 4.5 that goes into the calculation of their overall GPA. So for an honors class, it's an extra 0.5 per honors class. But it's still better to get an A in a CP class than a B in an honors class, because that would only be a 3.5 for that honors class going into the GPA with the 0.5 bump, but it would be a 4.0 in a CP class. So make sure if you're choosing the honors classes, the student is ready to do well in those and ready for the workload involved. For dual enrollment and AP courses, it's the same bump, but it's a 1-point bump. So an A in a dual enrollment or AP course would be a 5.0 to be calculated for that course in the GPA. Does that make sense?
All right, just a couple of other thoughts about the differences between honors and AP and dual enrollment. First of all, AP and dual enrollment is something that you guys don't really have to worry about too much yet, because remember, freshman year, you just have honors options. So that's just sort of a heads up, this is coming down the road. It's just good to kind of have an awareness of what that is, because sometimes there are some prerequisites that help your students be prepared for those higher level courses. But overall, in general, a lot of parents really have questions about this, like how many honors classes should my student take? And it's tricky to answer that in one answer for all of you in this room, because there's really a spectrum of, there are some students down here who they're scared of honors classes, they're making straight A's, but they don't want to give up that A, and so they're hesitant to even take an honors class because they really want to make an A and they're not sure they can in an honors class. That student needs to take an honors class to challenge themselves. Colleges are going to look for that to see that they've at least taken one to step out of their comfort zone and get some challenge and some rigor in their schedule. There's the other end of the spectrum with students who are signing up. Maybe they struggle, they make B's and C's, but they're like, you know what? Next year in high school, I feel like I'm going to go from a C student to an A student, and I'm taking all honors classes. That usually doesn't happen, so it could, and so we never say it can't, but for that student, it might be good to slow down a little bit and take a few less honors courses and just focus on the one maybe that they're really good at and that's going to come very naturally and that's not going to be drudgerous to them. And so we want to get them somewhere in the middle. Another factor is athletics and other extracurricular commitments. So honors courses are going to require more homework. They're going to move at a faster pace. They're really going to demand more out of your student. So if your student is playing 2-3 sports in a year, that's got to be factored in too to make sure not only are they capable of doing an honors class, but do they have time to do the work and to really not be drowning all year. Colleges, eventually down the road, are going to look for a student that is well balanced. They do something called holistic review, where they're looking at what is the student's GPA, what's their ACT score, what's the rigor of their courses, what clubs are they involved in, how are their teacher recommendations. There's all these things that they're looking at, so it's not just the grades. They don't really want students who make perfect grades and have no life. They want students who are going to really be able to invest in their campus and really be involved in clubs and to do things that really pour into their school. So they want to see that they're doing that in high school. So having a healthy balance is really important for them. So also another thing to keep in mind, there's an add drop period. I don't know if you guys have this in the middle school, but in the high school we have 9 weeks where a student can drop from a higher level to a lower level. So just knowing that, if they're kind of on the fringe and they're wanting to try an honors class, they do have that window of time to back down to the CP level if there's a spot open. And they have 2 weeks to change one class for another, 9 weeks to drop down to a lower level. Also, once you get to the dual enrollment and AP options, Mrs. Stauffer mentioned some colleges really prefer AP. That would be like a Vanderbilt. So the highly selective schools really want to see AP. So if your student is looking at some of those more selective colleges, that's going to be probably the path they're going to take. Whereas the dual enrollment is great for like UT Knoxville. UT Knoxville encourages students to take dual enrollment college writing because they say that it transfers really well and it's a really good play for them in terms of their college 4-year plan. So that's just helpful to know up front as you're thinking ahead for like English. And she mentioned the weighting in those courses. I'm going to take a look at this form with you. This is the 4-year plan, and this is the one that I think students get the most nervous about, but I can assure you guys there's nothing to be nervous about here. I'm going to explain this in a way that I think you're going to really be able to easily understand. And if you don't afterwards and you have questions, just meet with us. These are so individualized, and each student is so different. It's really best to be able to speak into that in a personal way. So there's not a one-size-fits-all for this, but I'm going to explain each different subject in a way that I think will make it easier for you to fill out. So the first thing is that I'm going to show you, over on the left-hand column, you see numbers in parentheses. Those are the amount of credits that a student needs to graduate. So as you're filling out your form, that just kind of helps you check, are we on track for graduation? Just look in the left-hand column. It's really easy to calculate it that way. And then we're going to kind of go subject by subject and just take a look at this. But freshman year, one thing I said I was going to kind of assure you that it's nothing to really worry about and panic about now. Freshman year, most of the classes are already selected for them. So like 6 out of their 7 classes are already pretty much chosen. So there's not a whole lot that they have to choose freshman year. That's on purpose, to kind of get them used to it, to help them make those choices. And then sophomore year, they get a few more. And junior and senior year is really the time where they're going to be selecting most of their courses. So they have time to kind of figure out the system before they have to do that. And we always tell students when they fill this out, first of all, write it in pencil. It's changeable. It's changeable all the way up to, we talked about that add drop period at the beginning of the year. So don't panic that it's set in stone. And also, we do this every year. Every single year, they're going to complete this form, and they're just going to recheck themselves. Am I still on track for graduation? Is there anything I want to change? Is there anything I want to adjust? So we look at this every single year. But I mentioned there are 6 classes that are pretty much chosen for them freshman year. So Bible, English, social studies, math, science, and wellness are pretty much in for their freshman year. That leaves like really one class. Maybe that's a study hall, maybe that's an elective, but that's pretty easy to figure out for most students once they realize, okay, I don't have to figure out 7 classes, it's just really 1 or 2. That could change if they do wellness over the summer or if they do 0 period, but we'll we'll get there. So we're going to look at each subject. So Bible, 4 credits. They're going to start with Old Testament. That's already chosen for them. There's no level for that. It's just CP for everybody. And they do a little bit of Harkness discussion in that course. English is going to be, they have CP or honors. It's really beneficial for them to take honors if they want to do the AP and dual enrollment down the road, to take the honors freshman and sophomore years to make sure that they're prepared for that down the road. They have to do honors sophomore year for sure. It's a prerequisite, but it's really best if they do it freshman year as well. Math, they might be, if they were in Algebra 1 in 8th grade, they're going to be in geometry this year. There is a CP and an honors version of that. If they were in pre-algebra, they're going to be in Algebra 1. And there's also a CP and an honors version of that as well. So the math progression goes Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-cal, calculus. And this is all in your program of studies. That's a great resource for you guys to really dig more deeply into this content when you get home. It's got every detail that you'll need to know as far as registration. Science is going to go biology, chemistry, and then a third science for most students. So the exception to that is you see where it says chemistry or environmental science. If your student really struggles with algebra, we recommend maybe thinking about holding off on chemistry until junior year, just to let them develop some more math skills, because that chemistry class is known to be kind of a doozy for a lot of students sophomore year if math doesn't come easily. So it's okay for them to wait. If they do that, then they're probably going to do environmental science sophomore year and then do chemistry junior year, and that'll complete their 3-credit sequence for science. So that would be a student that just doesn't really gravitate to math and science as much. Otherwise, they're going to do biology, and they can do CP or honors in that class. Chemistry has a CP or honors. And then their third science. The third science really should go in junior year. There's a few reasons for that. One is they're in the habit of doing labs. You don't really want them to get out of that habit because it's sort of hard to pick back up on that after taking a year off. The other thing is if they take that third year and decide they want to go on to a 4th year, they still have that option open. A lot of those junior year courses open up opportunities for additional science senior year if they decide they want to do that. World languages. They need 2 of these courses in the high school. So our options are Spanish and French. And so some of your students maybe took French in 8th grade, which is great. If they did that for French or for math, then those credits count as electives in the high school. So I'm just going to skip down to here for a moment. So an elective is anything extra. So if you have an extra social studies, Mrs. Stauffer mentioned, maybe you'll do AP Euro or Contemporary Issues sophomore year. That would be an elective because it's extra, because they only need 3. If you have an extra math, it's an elective. If you have an extra science, if your student does 4 instead of 3, that's an elective. So the rule, according to the state, is that these courses have to be taken in high school. So they need 2 years of foreign language in high school. So if they started with French 1 in 8th grade, they're going to do French 2 and French 3 in the high school for sure. Hopefully they'll go on and continue that. And that third one counts as an elective. With world languages, there's some definite strategy to this one. So if your student loves world language and they want to be proficient in a language and speak in that language and maybe use it for ministry or for work someday, then they need to think about that freshman year and kind of leave room to take 4 years of a language. So they're going to start a freshman year and they're going to finish senior year. We really encourage students to finish senior year. If they're going to take 4, if they're going to take 3, if they're going to take 2, it's helpful to kind of have an idea for that going in. And since they've had some exposure to languages already, most of them do kind of have an idea at this point. So the reason for that is in college, when they go into college, they're going to take a placement exam. And that's going to measure how much language they know. So they would not want to, let's say they know for sure they're just going to take Spanish 1 and Spanish 2. They don't want to do that freshman year and sophomore year because then they're going to have 2 years off. They're going to have junior year and senior year to forget all of the Spanish they spent 2 years learning, and then they're going to start at ground zero again in college, which is not beneficial for them. So for that student, if they know for sure they're only going to do 2 years, they're going to start junior year, and they're going to take it senior year. If they want to leave that option open, or if they're sure that they're going to do 3 or 4, they're going to start sooner. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's world language. Visual performing art can include choir and musical theater, band, or general art. Those are their 3 options. Anything beyond that is an elective. Wellness and PE. Students get very confused about this. It's very simple. Wellness is required for everybody. It doesn't matter if they're an athlete or not. Every single student takes wellness. Sometimes they take it over the summer in summer wellness. Really fun way to take wellness. They do like whitewater rafting and hiking and bowling and all these like off-campus activities that we can't really do during the school year. So it's kind of like a summer camp. It's through the month of June, and there is a registration form out there if you're interested in looking into that. A lot of freshmen will do that between 8th and 9th grade, or even between 9th and 10th grade. So that's a great way to do wellness, and then it opens up a spot on their schedule. But everybody takes wellness at some point. If they don't do it over the summer, it's really best to do it freshman year. We've kind of written it in there because it's a freshman level course and they're taking it with other freshmen. So it just kind of makes sense to leave it there. PE, on the other hand, can be replaced by sports participation. So if your student plays any sport in high school, any year in high school, they get that 0.5 PE credit. It only counts once. So if they play a sport every year, they do not get a half credit each year. They just get it once on their transcript. But that meets that requirement for them, so they don't have to take an additional PE course in high school. Then when we get down to the elective, you'll see it's 1.5 for the regular diploma and 2 additional for the honors diploma. So that would be a total of 3.5 for the honors diploma. So any questions on the 4-year plan before we move on? Yeah. How many students graduate with the honors diploma? I don't know offhand, but I would say 30, 40% maybe. Quite a few graduate with the honors diploma, but not all of them. The honors diploma just encourages them to stretch themselves. It says on the other sheet, like if they're going to a highly selective college, for sure, the honors diploma. Also, if they're going to a highly selective college, for sure, 3 to 4 years of a foreign language. Those would be the things that would set them up for that. All right, so this is, the next part is, oh, another question. That's a good question. So honors band can count as a half of a PE. We didn't have that option this year because we didn't do marching band. But if your student does marching band, they can get a half of a credit for PE. They cannot use it for both their performing arts and their PE. Does that make sense? So like if they're taking the full credit of band and using that as their performing arts credit, they'd have to take at least 1 additional year of band to get the PE credit. They can't double up. It's only marching band, yeah. No, just marching band. All right, so the first form was the 4-year plan. That's the paper form that's going to get turned in to the school counseling office. The next piece is the actual course request, and this is on RenWeb this year. This is the first year we've done it this way, and this is just where you're going to take you're going to want to do the 4-year plan first because you're going to take the first column of your 4-year plan and you're going to put it on here in your course request. So there's going to be probably for most of you 7 classes on here. The exception to that is if they do a 0 period, and that would open up an opportunity for an 8th class. 0 period is usually art, Spanish 1, sometimes wellness or PE, but we figure that out in the summer what the course offerings are what the schedule is going to be for next year. So if they want a 0 period, they're just going to put down 8 classes instead of 7. But this is an example of what a course request might sort of look like for a freshman. This has got a few extra classes, but it's going to be 7 probably of these courses. There's some variations. Sometimes students really want to do Warrior Network freshman year, or they really want to do something that's not on here. But most of the electives are junior and senior electives. So usually students are kind of trying to get their core classes out of the way so that they can get to those junior and senior level electives. So freshman year, they do 7 out of Bible, English, math, science, history, wellness, and then when they get to the bottom, they might choose to do band, choir, musical theater, or art. Choir and musical theater is another 0 period option. And then maybe a foreign language. All right. This part I'm not going to cover in great detail because it's in your program of studies. I'm just going to say there are a lot of really fun things to do in the high school. The program of studies, you can find all this information on the website, but it's in much greater detail in the program of studies. There's descriptions of the clubs. There's a calendar that kind of tells you when throughout the year the events fall, and it tells you descriptions of those who's invited to different events. So look at that packet more carefully at home for more information. If you have questions about that, of course, you can always follow up with us. One thing in the high school that's really fun, if you haven't experienced yet, it's Cafe PM. Students come to that on like a Thursday night, and it's here in the Commons, and they like sing and perform and read poetry, and it's just really fun for them. But there's lots of fun things in the high school. There's lots of great opportunities. Okay. And this is just more like community service, honor societies, and trips. So as they're thinking about, we talked about being well-rounded and getting a variety of experiences so that they have some things to put on their resume when they apply to college. These are some things they're going to think about. Colleges love leadership. Okay, so anything that has the word leadership in it is great. It can be a small thing, it can be a big thing, but anything that just gives them a chance to step out and lead and to prove their ability to do that is really valuable. Okay, the last thing. So there's some next steps. So now that you guys have gotten all this information, you're going to go home. The due date for these forms is this Friday, but if you need more time, just let us know. We're flexible with that. If you want to meet sometime next week and we can't get you in this week, we can wait to take that form until after we get a chance to meet with you. But what you're going to turn in is your 4-year plan, and if your student is taking any honors courses, the honors contract, and that goes to Mrs. McPherson in the middle school, and she'll submit those to us up in the high school. And then also remember to put in your course requests on RenWeb. How you're going to get there is you're going to go under student information, and under there's a spot for course requests, and you're just going to click all the options, click save. When you click save, it's not going to give you a notification. It's just going to kind of blink at you, but it's saved. You're good. So, and then if you're interested in summer school, make sure to get that summer school form turned into. You can also turn that in to the middle school office, and they'll get it up to us. And that is it as far as forms. So make sure if you didn't grab your program of studies on the way, there's a handbook out there. It's got lots of really great information. We update that each year. It's got course descriptions and everything, so grab that on your way out if you haven't gotten it yet. But we are going to give you guys some time to connect with us and to connect with our amazing faculty in the high school. They can answer any course-specific questions that you have. And then Mrs. Stauffer, Mrs. Jost, and I are going to go to those back tables in the back. So if you'd like us to look over a 4-year plan, or if you have questions about the Academic Center and what resources are available to your student through the Academic Center in the high school, you can stop by those tables. And we are glad to help. Thanks so much for coming out tonight, guys.